Morning. Shabbat Shalom to everyone, and welcome to our 5784 series called A Few Quality Moments Around the Shabbat Table with the Rabbi's Son. This is Bill, and I'm coming to you live from the Biblical Lifestyle Center in Texarkana, Texas, USA, and it is such a joy to be with you and share a little bit of your Sabbath with you. Today, we have the joy and yet the responsibility of parsing together the 38th subdivision of Torah, which is called Korach. This is a difficult parsha to read. It's a difficult parsha to study. That makes it all the more important in the grand scheme of the Creator's revelation stream. The idea is that we learn the most important lessons through the toughest narratives. We either will reproduce these lessons in our lives and in our world, or we will take the messages, take the lessons that were learned by those who went before us in the generation of the Exodus, and we will learn not to follow those pathways and not to achieve and receive those results. This is the parsha in which we learn the consequences of disconnection. We disconnect from the Creator Himself. We disconnect from everything we've known. And that becomes difficult and problematic for us and for the world around us. Our subject matter is found. Our stories are told in Numbers chapter 16 and verse 1 through Numbers chapter 18, verse 32. About 3 chapters worth primarily of narrative stories that the Creator designed, intended to put into this text that we would read every year about this time as the onset of the season of extremes, of heat in the northern hemisphere and of cold in the southern hemisphere, as the extremes of social upheaval as they're coming about throughout the world. Extremes as to emotional trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder as are being felt in all the different areas and nooks and crannies of the world by the different populations and different ethnicities and different ideologies and groups of the world. This is our season to learn these hard lessons of the wilderness. So, we have the issue of our quest. We are on this great quest to learn the answers to life's most important questions. We are not satisfied with what we've been getting from the political leaders of the world, or from the ideological leaders of the world, or the education systems of the world, or the scientists of the world, as they call themselves, or any of the experts or elites or cabals that tend to try to tell us what life is about, or what our life is worth or not worth. We want to go to the source. Come with me to the source of the Creator of the universe Himself, the one who made us, the one who designed the ecosystem in which we live, the one who knows the answers because He programmed them into His creation and into our creation. Come with me on this quest to find the answers to life's most important questions. If you want to kind of explore this deeper, that concept deeper, I'm not going to have time to do it today, but I would commend you to a couple of weeks ago when our studies or our discussions, our time around the Shabbat table, discussing Parsha Behalukah, the 26th Parsha, the 36th Parsha of Torah, and that I gave you more details about what our quest is, what the questions that we're asking are, and what the source of answers are. But I want to just talk to you about the fact that we find our answers to these most important questions of life being from the source itself, from the source Himself, being the Creator, and His means and His medium of discussion of those important questions with us, which is His Torah, this 5-volume instruction manual. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, a 5-volume instruction manual for sons and daughters of Adam, to flourish and to thrive on this earth, to excel and to bring out the best in each other and in the ecosystem that He's given us. Regarding how, regarding what, regarding how to live a life of excellence in human skin in real time. how to leave the world that we inherited or we received whenever we came into it a better place than we found it. How to lay a solid foundation of life and health and peace upon which our children, our children's children, and even strangers who we encounter and get to know along the way can build for a better future. These are the most important questions of life. And Torah is our 5-volume instruction manual from the Creator himself as to how to best do that. Now, what have we learned so far? Again, I would recommend you back to the discussions in Parsha Be'elot Ka about that, but I want to give you 2 main features, and we'll go into our Torah portion specifically. The first thing that we have learned and must understand is God, the Creator, is real. And as creator and as sustainer of a universe, of an ecosystem, and of a species, multiple species here on Earth, and throughout the heavens, whatever species there may be throughout the stars and the planets and whatever, if there are any, as a creator and sustainer of this cosmos and this ecosystem, he is with us. He is for us. And he is accessible to us. He is not estranged. He is not asleep. He is not sitting up there with a ruler waiting to judge us. He wants to communicate with us. He wants to teach us and train us. He wants to be our ultimate rabbi. Well, if knowing that is an important part. If we forget that, we go into disconnection, and we go into disaffection, and we go into dissociation, and we go into dysfunction. We'll learn about that more about as we study the details of the parsha known as Korach. But the thing about God being real and for us and with us and accessible to us is that we get this precious gift that empowers us, and that is God consciousness, or sometimes it's called awareness. And it is the fear of the Lord, which is the beginning of wisdom. Reshit Chokhmah, the shaking out point from which wisdom can take place. Yirat Adonai, and I call it fear of the Holy One of the Garden of Eden kind. That is our possibility. We have that potential in us. Reshit Chokhmah, the beginning of the laying out of wisdom, a wise approach to life. This is the essential key we are learning in our quest through Torah, the essential key to well-lived lives, the essential key to health and to peace and to fruitfulness, individually and collectively and as a species. And it is our key to both tikkun nefesh, the healing of the soul, healing of the human being's soul individually, and tikkun olam, which is the fixing, the healing of the creation ecosystem from its pollution and corruption with ra, evil, shakat, corruption, and hamas, which is violence or cruelty. This tikkun nefesh, tikkun olam that he has been given us to do. This is our joy. This is our delight. This is the reason we were put on earth in the first place. This is our essential purpose. Yes, we are answering the most important questions of life. What is our purpose? Tikkun nefesh and tikkun olam. The second thing, other than God is real, and what that means for us is that in the covenant that we have been given, it contains the essential technology and points and protocols of interface where we can download from the creator of the universe, this one who is with us and for us and has this great plan. We can download things through the interface of this covenant and its protocols and its disciplines that allow us to actually accomplish the things he put us on earth to do. And so to us, Torah, which is the interface. Torah is not an impersonal list of do's and don'ts, a set of rules and regulations. It's not a set of guidelines for making it to heaven either. That's not the point. What it is a portal of divine encounter and communion through touching Torah, through reading Torah, through meditating on Torah, through speaking the words of Torah as we sit in our homes and as we walk by the way, as we lie down and when we rise up, as we teach them to our children, as we do these things. This is a portal of divine encounter and communion because the words contain his essence. And if we touch the words, we touch his essence. We begin to reignite the Garden of Eden, the Yirat Adonai, the fear of the Holy One in the Garden of Eden style. So Torah is to us a divine portal, a portal of divine encounter and communion, not just a one-time encounter. It is a continuous flowing, interactive relationship with him. And it is a wellspring It just keeps flowing, keeps bubbling up, effervescing, a wellspring of essential revelation, what we need to know, when we need to know it, from the one who knows us best. So Torah at its essence is neither law nor proverb. It's not something you pick and choose a few nice, wise things from it, or things you like that sound good to your ears. It's neither law nor proverb. It is wise counsel from a loving father, a mentor, a creator on how to maximize and make the most of this experience that we call life. Yes, how to maximize and make the most of this experience that we mortals call life. And how to discover and bring out the best in the amazing ecosystem that he has given us for a habitat, in each species, in each individual, each specimen of those species, how to bring out the best in everything we touch. Wow, that's what this is all about. That's why we love Torah so much. So where are we in the Torah right now? Parsha number 38, Korach. We're 3 weeks into a unit, the final push of Torah's revelation stream. And it is the section of Torah I call the hard lessons we learned in the wilderness. The hard lessons we have learned in the wilderness. The reason he took us in the wilderness was to learn these hard lessons. Our calling as the Holy One's great nation, as he promised to Avram, requires us to know certain things, to have certain heightened perspectives over the rest of the nations. And the most important thing that we learn is how, from personal and collective experience, and experiencing personally the psycho-spiritual targeting of the adversary, and facing the trials, and facing the temptations, and facing all the frustrations, and facing all the serpentine deceptions that the nations face, to understand truly what makes the nations rage and what makes peoples imagine a vain thing. If we haven't experienced what they have experienced, if we haven't failed where they have failed, if we haven't found calamity where they have found calamity, then what can we give them? What do we know? We have to have faced those things, experienced those hard times, the disconnection protocols of the adversary, the psycho-spiritual targeting of our flesh and our pseudo-intellect and our pride and our arrogance. We have to face all those things. We have to deal with them, sometimes take great hits from them individually and collectively, and then begin a process of tikkun nefesh and tikkun olam, recenter, recalibrate, and reconnect, rather than do what the nations do, which is rage, do what the ethnicities do, which is imagine all sorts of vain things about other people and about the world and about God. And instead of doing those things, delight in the Holy One, not in perversion. Fixate on the Holy One's goodness and grace and his good, wise plan, not on folly. And rejoice in his presence and his love, not wallow in the world's vanity. Why do the nations rage? We're about to find out. So, before we do that, before we get into the Korachian experience, the Korachian disconnection season, what do we have that the nations do not? We are supposed to know why the nations rage, but we are not supposed to rage like them. We're not having days of rage like some religions do. We don't go on outrages like other philosophies or ideologies do. Why? What do we know that they don't know? What do we have that they don't have? La conexión. The connection to the creator of the universe. And it comes in 7 points we have learned. It's kind of like a twist to lock system, an align, twist, and lock interface system. Fitting, where the Holy One has the heavens and the earth, and we can have a point of connection of those, but it's a twist to lock, a 7-point alignment, twist to lock. What are the 7 points? What are the 7 teeth that we put the interface over and twist and lock in place? First one is we have the covenant of the creator of the universe through Abraham. Genesis 12, Genesis 15, We know, I won't go through the details of it. You should know it very well by now as we've been going through these studies together. If you haven't read it lately, go back to read Genesis 12, 1 through 3. And go read the first part of Genesis 15 and the first few verses of Genesis 17. Understand also the connection the covenant brings with the land. The covenant runs with the land of Israel, which is the staging point for the entire download of heaven into earth, heaven on earth, as it is in heaven. So the eternal covenant with witness is our first point of overlap, and we learn to twist to lock. But we can't do just one. Just the eternal covenant by itself is not enough. Second thing is we have a history with the Creator through our DNA. We have an encounter-rich DNA memory that leads us to fear the Holy One, to revere, to honor Him, to be aware of His and conscious of His presence. El temor del Señor. El temor del Señor, the awareness, the fear, the reverence of the Holy One. We have that because we have an encounter-rich DNA memory. We are the sons and the daughters of Noah, and the sons and daughters of Abraham, and the sons and daughters of Yitzhak, and the sons and daughters of Yaakov, and the sons and daughters of Joseph, and the sons and daughters of Moshe, and the people in Bnei Israel in the wilderness. We are the sons and daughters. We have this DNA memory that leads us to Yirat Adonai, the awareness, the consciousness of the Holy One. The third of the points of interface, of the teeth of the twist to lock system that we'll lock onto and line with, is the Sabbath. We have the seventh day Shabbat and all the things that flow out of the seventh day Shabbat. This is our recenter and recalibration appointment with the Creator. Whatever's happened during the 6 days of striving and work and labor and making parnassah, or finding food to eat and income to live off of, the 6 days are that, but the seventh day is our day to recenter and recalibrate with the Holy One and re-strengthen that connection. The fourth of the teeth, or of the twist lock system, the points of alignment, is the snow globe imagery. I've talked about the snow globes for a couple of weeks now. The idea, he gives us things to fixate our minds on, to focus. This is almost like in Sound of Music when Julie Andrews is singing about the dewdrops on roses and whiskers on kittens. Something to look at. Think of your favorite things. And so our favorite things are the Holy One's snow globe images. The images of living water flowing from a rock to us, of manna falling from heaven, of the tabernacle, of the pillar of fire and cloud, of the entrance to the tabernacle, of the lampstand of the tabernacle, of the Aaron lighting the lamps every morning and every evening, of incense in the table. These are our snow globe images, and there are more. Without going into details, I've talked about them for a couple of weeks, and you should know them by now. This is the fourth. We have these images that we can turn our minds to and overcome the difficulties of the world by saying, there is a better way. There is a better world. And the fifth of these points of interface is the Mishkan Courtiership Instruction Manual. We learn how to make approach to the Creator of the universe, to be welcome, to be courtiers, to be to have be known and to know the ways to behave in the courts of the great King, and to make psalmistry or tehillim, to be able to express, rather than put it on social media or express it in negative ways to other fellow human beings. We learn how to process our emotions and our confusion over what has happened in life through tehillim, through psalmistry. And this is part of the Mishkan Tabernacle courtiership teachings that we've learned. And it grounds us. This thing allows us to be grounded in the love of the Holy One. And you shall love Him with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Ahavat, or avodat, service of the Holy One, because of love of the Holy One, and love of your neighbor, service of the neighbor as well. The sixth of the post, or the alignment teeth, is the Torah. Every mitzvah is a lamp, it says. Every mitzvah is a ray of His light. So when we connect with a ray or a mitzvah or an instruction of Torah, we've connected with the ray of the light of His countenance, the Creator's countenance Himself. It's not independent of Him. It carries the light of His countenance. We see. So the Torah is the sixth. And seventh, and the final one that activates everything else, is Messiah. Mashiach, the promise of Mashiach is our focus and is our point of connection. And through this promise of Mashiach, Messiah, he will be our rabbi. He is our rabbi. He is our model. He is our mentor. He is our teacher. He is our guide through this life and all the processes. 7 points of connection. Viva la conexión. Long live the connection of Israel, of Bnei Israel, of the covenant nation with the Holy One himself. So, Parsha number 38, Korach, discovering what makes the nations rage. We know they rage. Oh, we've seen them rage. We've heard them rage. We see news reports all the time, or you go downtown and you see them rage. What makes the nations rage? Why don't we rage? Well, it's called why do they rage? Because they don't have a connection. They don't have the connection. They live life independent of the connection. And so when we have connection slippage, when we don't align the 7 teeth of the lock, twist and lock interface, then we have what I call connection slippage. We lose some of these things. We lose the fear, the reverent fear of the Holy One. That is the beginning of wisdom. We lose the emphasis on the snow globes, and we start seeing only what's going wrong around us, how bad it all is. We don't see the hope of the future. We don't see potential. We only see evil. You see the 7, each of the 7 has its own connection. But if we have connection slippage, we become like the nations and we begin to understand what makes the nations rage. And though with connection slippage comes simnach hinam. Again, a Hebrew phrase that's usually translated by most people simplistically as baseless hatred. The idea is, after we have a connection slippage, we cease to have the mercy of the Holy One. We cease to understand that mercy overcomes judgment. And so we instead apply judgment and criticism and condemnation to other people. We look up our noses, turn up our noses, look up look up to our own selves as opposed to them, and we look down on them. Sinat means we will give them no grace, no mercy, no quarter, no opportunity, no benefit of the doubt. We will give others none. That's sinat hinam. And as a result of connection slippage and sinat hinam, social fabric unravels and rage takes over, and vain imaginations proliferate. So that is what we have to experience so that we will know why the nations rage. The week's theme is, if, as, and when, every time you disconnect from the portal of encounter with the Creator, from His presence, and you disconnect from the fountain of heaven's energy, which is His Torah and His snow globe images from the tabernacle, when you disconnect from those portals, you disconnect from the most important assets you have, the thing that makes you different from the nations. You disconnect from His face, His paneh. In Hebrew, it means presence or face. Both, it's where He radiates Kedusha energy. Being in His presence means you absorb His energy, the energy that fuels the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders and the cherubim and the seraphim of heaven. The same energy that it comes out of Him, from Him, and empowers and animates everyone around Him, does that to us. And we lose the connection with His portal of encounter. We lose that energy. We lose His face. Second thing we lose, if we just disconnected from His portal of encounter and His fountain of heaven's energy, from the presence in the Torah, is we lose His voice, that true tone that pulls all things together, that sweet voice that spoke Yehi or light be, and every other aspect of creative words, this true tone of heaven, and instead we hear only the muffled voices of men and the screaming, crying of the wildcat and the predators and the birds of prey and the mockers of the world. We lose His voice. There's nothing more precious than His presence, and there's nothing more precious in second position than His voice. When we disconnect from his portal of encounter, his presence, and from his fountain of heaven's energy, we get the disconnection, then we lose his vision. Psalm 2, 6 through 12, I have set my king upon my holy hill. And all these things about the nations raging because they come against this king. They don't see the beauty of this king on the holy hill. They don't kiss the sun. And chapter 8 of Psalms, oh Lord, how excellent is your name in all the earth. What is man that you're mindful of him? And talk about this great plan. Holy One has a vision, but we have to be connected to him and to his fountain of heaven's energy, his Torah, to be able to see his vision unfolding as opposed to just the things we see on the earth. The fourth thing that disconnection means to us is we lose the sense of his majesty, the power of his majesty, of his beauty, of his beauty realm, of his weight, the weight of his glory. Whenever he moves, when he does something, when he speaks, we lose the sense of his majesty, and therefore we become banal, and we become arrogant, and we become foolish and vain. We lose the sense of his majesty when we disconnect from him. We disconnect from his goodness and his goodwill and his favor, and all we see is judgment and anger and hate and snobberishness. We lose the light of his countenance, so we lose his mercy. And we lose his plan. We lose his strategy. We lose his guidance. We lose the ordering of our steps. We just don't understand that our steps are ordered, and so we step wherever we want to step. And then we lose his love. Not the sense that he quit loving. We just lose the ability to experience his love. The ability to revel and rejoice and receive his love. And we lose his discipline because we will not respond to anything if we do not feel his love. All right. What is the irrefutable evidence of disconnection? Because that's what we're going to find in Parsha Korach. There will be irrefutable evidence of disconnection. We will learn why the nations rage, because we will become disconnected from the creator of the universe. And what will be the telltale signs, the irrefutable evidence of disconnection when we engage with one another in profane warfare. The profane warfare of ivory tower egotism. That's the story of Korach and Dathan and Abiram and On. That's the story of the Korachian rebellion or insurrection, the engagement in profane warfare of ivory tower egotism and ivory tower emotions, a sense of discontent, a sense of offense, a sense of outrage, a sense of fear, a sense of hate. So profane warfare is ivory tower egotism, fueled by ivory tower emotions, culminating in ivory tower ideas that we exchange or hold on to as if they were true and that they were real, which we've lost the sense source of real revelation. So all we have is the fallen state of man's mind coming up with a bunch of self-focused ideas that sound good on paper or in theory, but they don't work. They don't fix the world. They don't fix the soul. They don't fix anything. So the ivory tower emotions fuel ivory tower ideas, and ivory tower ideas fuel ivory tower theories, and we argue over those ivory tower theories, and we come up with ideas of what's good versus evil, and what's moral versus immoral, and what religion is we want to follow, what science we want to believe in, and what medicine we want to use, and what model of government we want to apply, what ideology we will support, what philosophy we will live by, what social justice means in the world. We'll follow all these ivory tower theories that have total disconnection from the creator of the universe, and that will lead us into wars of ivory tower rhetoric. So ivory tower egotism, ivory tower emotions, ivory tower ideas, ivory tower theories, ivory tower rhetoric, profane warfare of the ivory tower world. But the testimonies of Torah are our antidote to all this, because they are the portal of encounter and communion with the Creator. That's why the Holy One says the testimonies of Torah, which are the stories, like the story of Korach that we're going to read, and the story of plague that followed, and the story of Aaron's budding rod that we're going to read in Parsha Korach. These testimonies of Torah, stories or testimonies. The psalmist in Psalm 119 says, I have rejoiced in the way of your testimonies, your stories, as much as in all riches. You see, because through these stories, through even the dark side of the stories we read, like Korah's story, these ivory tower profane wars, even through those things we learn his ways as much as in all riches. The testimonies, the stories that Torah tells. You see, they are actual historical facts, but they are also put in the Torah because they're real life parables. A lot of things happen that weren't recorded in the Torah. You couldn't record every day's every event. So specific things are strategically placed in the Torah. Some of these stories are so important as real life parables that they're placed in the Torah as critical teaching tools that help us to understand the reasons for and the proper application and implementation of the mitzvot, the lamps, the lights that show forth and radiate the light of the Holy One in the world. And that's what the mitzvah, that's what the commandments, as I say, the judgments, the ordinances of the Holy One are designed to do, is cast his light into every situation we face. Each story, like the Korach story, that is selected for inclusion in Torah's narrative, was strategically placed here in the text, in this 5-volume instruction manual, in a carefully selected context, usually right before or after a big mitzvah download, a big set of free-flowing divine instruction, discourses, I like to call it, of the Holy One. It says, and the Holy One spoke to Moshe and said, and went forth for chapter upon chapter. We've had several of those, but before and after them, we usually see one of these stories interjected because it tells how to interpret and how to apply or how not to apply the lessons we learned in the mitzvah download. So, if we use that as our gauge to figure out what's going on here and why this story is put in the Torah, why are we reading this story about Korah and his disconnect world and the world of Korah's rebellion and insurrection? What mitzvot of Torah is this story of Korach's rebellion supposed to highlight and illustrate? What are we supposed to learn from the story and learn not to do from the story? What about the way the nations rage are we supposed to recognize that we could go down that road just like they do? But we have an ability not to also. What is it the story of Korach's rebellion is trying to teach us? Well, to understand that, you got to understand the context of the story in which the story is told. Before we do that, I always like to sing our call to worship together. Pause and take a deep breath. Receive a breath from the Holy One, an inspiration from the Holy One. Hold it for a few seconds and then begin to sing our Baraku. The sounds of heaven connecting with the tone, the true tone, and the goodness and the radiating face and presence of the Holy One. We sing the Baraku, the blessing, before touching this divine portal of encounter and communion, the blessing before reading from the Torah, Baraku. Join me if you know it. Baraku Adonai Hamvorak. Baruch Adonai Hamvorak Leolam Vaed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bakar Banu Mikol Ha'amin V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah. Amen. And open our eyes now, O Holy One, that we all may see wondrous things in your Torah, for we are just strangers here on the earth, so do not hide your commandments from us. Well, let's get some context for the story of Korach. In Parshat Beha'alotka 2 weeks ago, it all began with a series of disconnection evidences. We began to show that when we got in the heat of the desert, we faced the trials of the environment, when things began to resurface in us that had been there in Egypt but had been sort of calmed and quieted by the presence of the Holy One at Sinai. When these things began to happen in Parsha Beha'alotka in the second half of that Parsha, we found out that we are dealing with the same things that makes the nations rage. So we're now in the third week of this unit of wilderness testing, partial of segments of Torah designed to teach us the hard lessons of the wilderness. And this section is read every year. It is part of our training. It is part of our necessary education in the Torah, because it reveals to us, teaches us the sowing and reaping consequences of indulging in things like fleshly distraction, indulging in things like the negativity of thought and opinion that the world so throws at us all the time, of the negative consequences, the reaping and sowing consequences, or sowing and reaping consequences of indulging in self-centered complaining, self-obsessed complaints about how we don't like things and we don't want things, and self-righteous criticisms of other people, or even of ourselves or of the Holy One, and self-promoting accusations we make against others when we project our own failures and our weaknesses on others, or we point out those things of others so we don't have to face the things in ourselves. We say, oh, he's worse than I am, she's worse than I am. We do self-promoting accusations, ad hominem attacks. And we learn the sowing and reaping consequences of indulging in antisocial behaviors that run rampant this time of this year, every year. We were prepared for this particular section of toxicity that we're going to face, of learning why the nations rage, of disconnection, by the last part of Parsha Shelach Lekat. In Numbers 15, 39 through 41, after we made the choice to die in the desert, the Holy One gave us a mitzvah that is going to color and shape everything about the Korach narrative. If you don't know this mitzvah, then the Korach narrative doesn't make any sense to you. Why suddenly did this happen? Because the Holy One is warning us in advance of a protocol we need to follow so that we don't go down this long, winding road to destruction, to nation raging, to vain imagination thinking. So what did he give us? What was the mitzvah? The mitzvah of the lezitzit, the flowering fringes. And he said, what did he say? He said, speak to Bnei Israel and tell them. So this is the mitzvah that's going to empower us, if we're listening, to overcome what's about to happen with Korach and Datan and Aviram and On. He says, Va'asu lechem zitzit, make and craft, shape for yourselves zitzit, tassels, artistic frayings, al kidifei begdehim, and on the wings and the extremities, the edges of their garments. Ledoratam, do it for all generations. Natnu al zitzit ho kanaf petil techelet, to put on the artistic frayings of the wings of a ribbon of blue. V'haya lachem lezitzit uritim oto, and these will be unto you as fringes. And when you see them, we're getting to it now. When you see them, uritim oto, when you see them, uzakartim et kol mitzvot Adonai, you are to remember. Bring to the forefront of your mind, call to your consciousness all the Holy One's mitzvot, instructions for living. The portal of encounter with the presence. The portal of wisdom and revelation. You are to remember, call to the forefront of your mind all these things. Va'asitim otam, and you are to build them, make them happen in real time. Velo taturu achare levayevekem v'ka'achare, and you will not go a-touring, go a-whoring, it says in the King James, go a-wandering after your hearts, the meditations of your hearts, and after what your eyes, what your physical eyes see. Chem asher atem zonim abrachem, and then you will, if you do that, you will follow these things, your hearts and your eyes, as you tour after them. You'll follow them into deviant adulterations. He warned us. He said, Lama'an tizkeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai. This is so that you may remember to build all my instruction manual, my mitzvot. V'heitim kedoshim le'elokim, and you will be holy ones. empowered ones unto your God, from your God. Ani Adonai Elohechem, I am the Holy One, your God. Asher hotzeti at etkem me'eretz Mitzrayim. I thought I have delivered you from Egypt, the land of Egypt, in order that lehiyot lechem Elohim, that I may be for you God. Ani Adonai Elohechem. Remember, this is your point of connection. Remember, I am your point of connection. Remember, I am your hope to overcome what the nations rage about and what the peoples imagine a vain thing about. He warned us. I am the Holy One who brought you out of Egypt. Ani Adonai Elohechem. Oh, this was connection, remembrance, but we did not get the picture. And so we have the opening lines of Parsha Korach. This week's Parsha, number 16:1 and following. I'll read it in Hebrew and follow with as good an English translation as I can come up. Vayikar Korah! And Korah took. This is all about Korah's taking. He's going to take men. Vayikar Korah ben Yitzhar ben Kahat ben Levi, the son of Yitzhar, the son of Kahat, the son of Levi. He took Vayikach. He took Dathan, and he took Abiram, and he took the sons of Eliab, those sons of Eliab. And he took On, the son of Pelet, all these sons of the tribe of Reuven, Bnei Reuven. Vayakamu lifnei Moshe, and they rose up against Moshe. Ve'anashim mipnei bnei Israel, with men before the Bnei Israel. They came publicly against Moshe. Kamashim umatayim nesa'e edah keriyeh moed anshe Shem, and 250 men of rank and influence and reputation from the appointed assembly. Vayakayahalu al Moshe v'al Aaron, and they called a protest gathering, an assembly, a protest against Moshe and Aaron. V'yomeru alehem rav lachem, and they said to them, Rav lachem, too much of you, you're too much you, Rav lachem. And they said, Ki kol ha'edah kulam kedoshim, for all of the witnesses, all the throng is holy, every one of them. Uvtokam Adonai, and the Holy One is among them all. Umadu'u titmatsu el al kahal Adonai. Why then? Umadahu. Why then do you exalt yourselves? Al kahal Adonai, above the kahal, above the assembly. Woo! That was strong language, fighting words. And so we have the seductive demagoguery, propaganda of Korach. Welcome to the summer of our discontent. Welcome to disconnection, the season of disconnection. We learn the hard lessons of why the nations rage. Welcome to the season of dissociation, the season of dissension in the camp, and the season of dysfunction in the kingdom. This is the season. Introduction to the demagoguery and the propaganda, seduction, intellectual, emotional captivity and bondage. You see, we're out of physical captivity, but now we're into intellectual, emotional captivity. This is why the nations rage. This is why the peoples imagine a vain thing. Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kohat ben Levi, he captured, he enlisted in his 80 cup, converted Dathan and Abiram and other men, 250, and they rose up together before Moshe's face. They got in Moshe's face, along with all these people, and they gathered against Moshe and against Aaron. And this is a case study, a parable, a tragic, never-to-be-forgotten story that keeps us humble, because it could happen to us in our generation as well if we don't maintain the connection, if we don't keep the Zitzit mitzvah awake and alive to keep our connection strong, our 7 points of interface, our 7 points of twist and lock connection with the Holy One in place. A tragic, never-to-be-forgotten story of our first homegrown influencer, our first homegrown taker, Korach ben Yitzhar. Now, we had a previous influencer or taker, and that was Jethro, as he's called in the King James Version. Moshe's father-in-law. He was a goy. He was of the nations, and what he had to say and how he had to kind of distract and mess up the camp. That was because he was a foreigner. That's who he is. It's what he does. We can understand him. But one of our own, one of the leaders of our nation, standing up and becoming this taker, this influencer, that's what we haven't seen before. And we see that this is a tragic, never to be forgotten story, not only of him, but of the precious souls that he took, and he took down with him. Parsha 38, Korach, which is our study this week, is a parsha of summer words and summer behavior, intensely emotional, offensive. Here an outrage, there an outrage, everywhere an outrage. That's what we have this season. But seasons like this just don't happen in a vacuum. In order to get to seasons like this, a nation has to have sown the wind, what I call hot air talk, in this time of former rains, if it is going to reap the whirlwind in the heat of summer like this is. Tensions have been mounting for a long time. Tempers have been flaring. Accusations have been flowing. Lines have been forming, and rumblings of social upheaval have been rumbling. And civil war has been talked about seriously and has begun to fill the air. Welcome to the season of reaping what you sow. You understand? If you do not have the creator of the universe in point of connection with you, in interface with you, then the law of sowing and reaping is what happens in the world. It's not the Holy One's judgment. It is his natural law. So we are now reaping what we're sowing. Korach's Minecraft tools. How does Korach take men? How do people take you? How can you be taken? You're an independent, free-thinking person, right? You're the child of the living God, but you too can be taken. That's the key to know from this parsha. There are Minecraft tools that men like Korach, disaffected, angry men, self-centered men, ambitious men will take, and they will use those Minecraft tools to influence you, and you will be, if you're not careful, you will be taken. Like the 250, like Datan and Aviram and On, and like all those who fell in the plague that followed the Korach's rebellion. So what are the Minecraft tools? What is a taker? What does an influencer use to take you? He will take an undercurrent of discontent in the world around you, or in your family, or in you. If there is a rumbling of discontent, a complaining, a frequent complaint, if there is a sense of jealousy or offense that he can manipulate, this is his fertile ground. He can employ all the tools. So he must find an influencer, a taker must find someone who's upset and discontent. If he feeds that with his language. And how does he use it? With language. The influencer like Korach uses catchy, biting slogans. Hit it hard. Biting slogans, giving a voice, an illusion of legitimacy to the discontent, to the offense, to the envy that he wants to manipulate. He says things like, Rav Lachem, a catchy slogan. Too much of you. You're too much. There's too much. You take too much on yourself. It's a short Hebrew phrase that has a lot of color to it and a lot of emotion to it. It's an accusation. It's a catchy slogan. It's like saying from the river to the sea, or any of the other political, ideological slogans that people want you to repeat and recite. And when they say it, they get this sense of power because, you see, they've been taken by the discontent, by the offense, by the envy that drives them. They've been manipulated and used by the influencer, by the Minecraft tool worker. So catchy, biting slogans is the first part, but that didn't stop there. Once he gets you with the catchy, biting slogan, and he has you repeat this, this live matter, or whatever he may tell you to repeat, lock her up, lock him up, whatever it may be the slogan they love to use. When they get you with the slogans, then they hit you with the high-sounding cliches that appeal to your pseudo-intellect and your sense of moral supremacy. For instance, in Korach's case, he said, "For all the assembly is equally holy." It sounds really good. It's like an egalitarian theory, equality, all these wonderful things, equity, justice. But you see, it really has no substance to it. It's all an intellectual mind game. It has no substance to how you actually treat people, how you actually engage with the creation. It's just a game people play in their head. This whole idea of equality, of equity, of all these different things are just mind games people play. And that's when they've got you. They got you with their catchy, biting slogans. And now they've got you with their high-sounding cliches. And you repeat them as if you were programmed to do it because it sounds so good. It just makes no sense, has no substance to it. Social justice is one of those high-sounding cliches. And then the fourth way, the way in which you're totally under their power, under the power of the influence, under the power of the Minecraft, is the ad hominem attacks against the object of the offense, or the discontent, or the envy. You pick somebody to blame. And so if it could be the leader of the other opposing an ideological or political party, it could be in this situation Moshe and Aaron. Somebody you can blame for all the things you're offended about, or all the things you're envious of, or all the things you're upset and discontent about. Oh, the undercurrent of discontent, the catchy biting slogans, the high-sounding cliches, appealing to the pseudo-intellect and the moral supremacy, and ad hominem attacks against the object of the offense or the envy or the discontent. Now, those are the Minecraft tools that the takers use to influence you. So, this undercurrent of discontent offense, how did it work in Korach's case? I want to start this off by telling you a little parable. Misery loves company, you've heard that. But offense loves and craves a spokesman. Offense loves and craves a spokesman, someone to advocate for it, someone to be its champion. So this is what happens with the influencer, the taker. You see what happened in the camp. The story, the narrative is that we were suffering connection slippage as people of the Holy One. We had begun to slip away from the understanding of the presence of the Holy One, the word, the true tone of the Holy One's voice. We had begun to slip off at the sin of the spies and the complaint season at Taberah, and what happened with Miriam and Aaron speaking against Moshe at Hatzarot. And all these different times we had begun to slip. So we had connection slippage. And now the Kedusha, the holiness energy of heaven, was not flowing freely into our camp. And its associated 5K gifts, the Hayah, the enthusiasm for life, the kivod, the weight and the holiness and the glory of Holy One's ways and his will, and then the other aspects of the chesed, the covenant faithfulness, acts of covenant faithfulness from us were not flowing backward to him. He was still being faithful to us. We weren't being faithful to him. And then the other aspects of the 5K gifts, and we talked about those in previous weeks. So that's not flowing. The Kedusha is not operating. The connection slippage has occurred in the camp. And our flesh was chafing under the divine discipline that we would live our 40 years out in the wilderness. We would not go into the land because we had slandered and blasphemed it and not wanted any part of his will because of the lies about the giants. 3 giants, we thought the whole world was full of giants. Okay, and then we're flashing under hot temperatures, the summer heat, the desert conditions, a lot of PTSD from getting whooped solidly by the Amorites whenever we went up presumptively and tried to take the land anyway. So the flesh was chafing under the divine discipline. Guilt and shame were trending in our community. We lost our connection with the Holy One, so we'd lost our kippur. We'd lost our sense of healing covering that was covering us and healing our wounds. We didn't have that, so guilt and shame start trending. And so when guilt and shame start trending, blame starts coming. Every time you hear people beginning to feel guilty, you begin to say they have to project that on somebody else. So that's when people start blaming other people. And we have grief phases going on, denial and anger and blame, because we've lost members of our community during the sin of the spies and its aftermath. And then again, it's always easier, of course, to find fault with and to criticize and to blame leaders than it is to deal with the problem constructively and to approach the Holy One's things the Holy One's way with a solution-focused approach. Oh, what was the catchy biting slogan that Korach used to give an illusion of legitimacy to the discontent? viral sloganing, it's called, manipulating human emotion, speech, and behavior by creating short, catchy phrases that deliver persuasive, disruptive messaging. They highlight social wedges between us, prejudices, activate prejudices. They sow discourse and divisions on ethnic and generational and gender and ideological, political, and cultural lines. They capture attention, they provoke institutional responses sometimes. As Hitler said, keep it simple, say it often, and make it burn. At least that's attributed to him. No one knows for sure if he really said it or not. Keep it simple, say it often, and make it burn. This is the catchy, biting slogans that catch people's mind and draw them into their web. And in his case, in Korach's case, it was the simple two-word phrase, Rav lachem, too much of you, you're too much. What was the high-sounding cliche? The more abstract, the better, appealing to the pseudo-intellect's craving for moral superiority. The way he said it was, Kol ha'eda kulam kedushim, all the witness throng is equally holy. Uv tokam Adonai, and the Holy One is among them all. There was a ring of a slight amount of truth to what he said, but it was not filled out and didn't explain that there are also great differences in things that are. The Holy One always divides things. Nothing's equal with the Holy One. The Holy One has everything assigned to a purpose, assigned to a function, assigned to a level, and that is the Holy One's way. And they may all appear equal because they're all part of His plan. They are not equal in regard to their kedusha. They have different levels of kedusha flowing in them. People have different levels of kedusha flowing. Look, the level that was flowing in Moshe is not like the level flowing in other people. If you want to remember this, go back to the story of Numbers, I think it's 14, where the Holy One's talking to Aaron and Miriam and saying, I don't talk to Moshe the way I talk to you or other people or other prophets. I have a special relationship. It's not equal. Well, you see, that was all glossed over and misstated, misleading declarations of, but all the witness throng is equally holy. Who've token Adonai, and the Holy One is among them all. Well, not equally. The Holy One was a lot more with the Leviim and with the priesthood and with Moshe and with Aharon than he was with other people. Not that he didn't love them equally, or actually, but also that he just treated people differently for the different purposes for which he gave them. So it is with the world. When you hear people talking about equality, understand you're getting taken, you're getting used, you're getting manipulated by other folks. Well, the fourth thing, what was the ad hominem attack against the object, against Moshe in this case, and against Aaron? Here it is. Umadu tit maseu al kahal Adonai. Why do you presume to exalt yourselves above the called out ones of the Holy One? Roll that tape back. Why do you, Moshe, presume to exalt yourself above the called out ones of the... Wait a minute. Court reporter, Madam Court Reporter, could you wind that back, please? Where did that ever happen? This is an old rehashing of a distant past from back to Egypt, back to Exodus 2:14. Whenever Moshe, before he had the encounters with the Holy One, he tried to break up a fight between two Hebrews, and one said, "Who made you a prince and a judge over us?" You see, this is what happens whenever we start rehashing the sins of the distant past of someone we don't like. We want to blame for our problems. We ignore and we delegitimize all the post-sin maturation process and the express calling of the Holy One. We disregard all that because we've disconnected, and truth becomes relative. Always truth is the first victim of offense and disconnection. Well, we've learned a little bit about, just to start with, why the nations rage and why the peoples imagine a vain thing. The same thing can happen to us, and that's the lesson of the story of Korach. If we do not follow the twist to lock protocols of connection with the Holy One, don't get disconnected and don't get taken. It's time for me to leave you, beloved. See you next week.